My name is Molly Murphy McGregor. I'm the Executive Director and the co-founder of the National Women's History Project. I retire in 2 years and 9 months. The date is December 31st, 2020. And I tell you that because the National Women's History Project is in transition because of that. Because I've been at it from the very beginning, which means I have all the institutional knowledge. And the National Women's History Project, I don't know how much of you know about it, but we're the organization that spearheaded the movement for first Women's History Week and then National Women's History Month. And we provide the materials, resource materials, ideas, curriculum, because from the very beginning when we asked teachers to incorporate women into the curriculum, they didn't know what we were talking about. They didn't even think there was a possibility of doing that. And what we train them to do is just ask new questions. Just asking the questions, what were the women doing? How did this event impact different cultural groups? Just a whole series of questions. And my experience of coming to women's history and having it be not only the passion, but the total of my life was when I was a young second-year teacher, and a kid asked me, what is the women's movement? And it was 1972, banner year in women's history. The women's movement. Ms. Magazine was published for the first time. 1972, Title IX was written to be enacted in 1977. Shirley Chisholm runs for President of the United States. Barbara Jordan is elected as the first black since Reconstruction from the South. It is a banner year. I am a second-year young social studies teacher, so I needed to know. Oh yeah, did I mention I was female? So I needed to know everything that this young man asked. And so I paused for a moment, tried to look as intelligent as I possibly could, and then I said, what a good question. Let's divide into groups and look at that from the perspective of the government. How does the government perceive the women's movement? And how about in terms of the churches? How are the churches seeing it? And what are the political ramifications of the women's movement? And then, as if history wasn't my great passion, I finally said, and historically, what would we say about it? It was a Friday. I was stalling. I was way too insecure to say, I don't know what you're talking about, kid. And I went home to my Sacred Shrine of History books, and sure enough, one chapter, one book, Seneca Falls Convention of 1848. The whole thing was outlined in yellow, got straight A's in history, so clearly I passed the test and had no gratitude, recognition, connection to the women who had preceded me. Here I was, a married woman, teaching high school, wearing pants to school, and how did that all happen? Most significantly for me was the fact that I'm the youngest of 9 children, and my mother was dead by this time, and I had never, ever recognized what her life was like in terms of being a woman. She was my mother, and mothers just naturally do everything. So that's been my propelling throughout all of it. I went back to graduate school so that I could learn what I didn't know at all. And with that became involved with our Commission on the Status of Women, taught a class at the community college. Women in that class went to see what their kids were being taught. They said, hey, Molly, we must have just missed it, when we went through school, and discovered that of the 3 to 7 books they could find in any school library, and they looked at 3, and that means any biography, the word woman, anything, 3 to 7 books, they hadn't been checked out in anywhere from 5 to 15 years. So with that information, we went to the county schools and we said, we'd like you to institute a Women's History Week on the school calendar. We'd like it to be the week of March 8th because that's International Women's Day. And from the outset, we want to be talking about all women. And we want to be talking about women who work inside the home and outside the home because International Women's Day is a working women's holiday, from the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. So, but of course, we don't celebrate labor in this country, so it wasn't exactly picked up. The women's movement began to pick it up and celebrate it. So there we had it, no opposition. They were all for it. And I said in my grandiose fashion, well, and I'll be glad to present the curriculum materials, because as a teacher, I knew the last thing you wanted was somebody to come in and tell you, here, teach women, and you know nothing. So, which is why it hadn't been checked out in 5 to 15 years, right? Teachers, we teach what we know. We assign what we know. It's not like this conspiracy. It's just, I never thought about it. Why would I do it? So from the get-go, accumulating the resources was really a challenge. Only Berkeley in California had ever done anything on International Women's Day or even on Susan B. Anthony that we could find. And the National Women's History Project grew up as an organization finding materials, finding books, finding anything about women so that we could circulate it. There was an article, I attended in 1979 a conference that was chaired by Gerda Lerner. It was 39 women for 19 days. I went back there. I was totally the young punk of the group. They were the president of Girl Scouts, president of AUW, all these high echelon women. Some of them had run for Congress, and many of them knew President Carter. So I went back there asking them to create a National Women's History Week. And they went forth and multiplied, and by that February, I got a call from President Carter from the White House. Went something like this. This is the White House calling for Molly MacGregor. I said, oh, one moment, please. I put them on hold so I could get my breath. Anyway, it was Sarah Weddington calling for President Carter to say that he was going to issue the resolution. And then the National Women's History Project grew up, promoting it every way we could. We're the ones that develop the theme every year so it can be unifying and even more spectacular. We used to joke that it would be Sonoma County and then California and then the world. We had no idea it would jump from Sonoma County to the nation to the world. So that's what we do primarily. We're a clearinghouse. We used to be the Google and Facebook of the women's history movement because there wasn't a Google and there wasn't a Facebook and there wasn't a lot of information out there about women's history. Now, it's miraculous of the curriculum that you can find, the biographies that you can find. But when we began all of this in 1980, it was non-existent. And so that's who we are. And now that we're in transition, we want to become even more so. Next year, we're going to change our name to the National Women's History Alliance. And in that fashion, we hope to be able to even connect more groups. We do have right now a Women's History Alliance that any of you can join free. Just go to our website, put in Women's History Alliance and sign up. And that really, we started so that we could start promoting 2020 and the 100th anniversary of suffrage. We figured we needed to start early. Our goal is to get a federal holiday for that day. And we have the Girl Scouts working on it. We have a whole cadre of folks. Probably nothing will really move forward until after the November election, but a lot's going to change hopefully after the November election. Nevertheless, we work with serve on several boards of directors that are working on suffrage material and the centennial. And so that's why we have as much information as we do. And our goal is to always connect other people to information sources, whether it's resources or whether or not it's individuals. When you said about your play, we have a performers listing.
I know, I was on that for many years with my Charlotte Perkins Gilman.
Yeah, So we have a performers listing so that people can find you, and that's in the expansion of our website. That's how we plan to expand in ways to help people connect. The resources are now there. We don't need to produce any more resources per se, except for the resources that celebrate the theme, because that's kind of a one kind of thing. But we have other kinds of resources. But as we develop this transition, we probably will become much more around the theme and around the specifics, and let other people take some of those other jobs. So I don't know all that you wanted me to say. Where are you, Sue? I don't know all that you wanted me to say, but I guess what I can say most anything is that we are the clearinghouse. If you have an issue, you have a question, you want to know somebody who might have done it, you want to know what organization is working on it, you want to know what listserv you might join, that's one of our major functions now. We, of course, provide resources and curriculum and, all of that. I cannot tell you how many old women, that would be women my age, who are discovering women's history for the very first time. They're my favorite phone calls of people who almost are weeping when they've just discovered our website. They just had no idea. So, and that's what we want to do. We want to continue to make women weep. No, we want to continue, because, and this new generation, oh God, bless them. They are so excited. They don't know any women's history either. They are just overwhelmed when we start. I do a lot of presentations on specific women or women in history, and these 17, 18-year-olds, they weep because they had no idea of the tradition that they're following up in, but they certainly are. So that's who we are. That's what we do. I have this extraordinary, and I mean extraordinary, board of directors. Those of you that have served on board of directors, some of them are not necessarily extraordinary, but I have one that is. And every year, among the things we do is we ask the world to nominate women that they would like to see recognized for the next year. It used to be for Women's History Month, but this year we're moving past Women's History Month and having the theme be the whole year. We're having a second big event in August so we can start pushing Women's Equality Day. We want to push past the boundaries of March. And when we say we have a theme, a 2018 theme, we're not talking about that theme being for March. We're talking about that theme being for 2018. And my board of directors, I'm the only paid staff, so you can only guess how much work they do. The Gazette that I hope all of you will get, we're show and tell somebody that this Gazette is about this year's honorees. Emily wrote almost the entire thing. It's just a treasure. So we send out a message to the world. This year we've changed it because we get so many nominations. This year we're only having our members, which anybody can become one, but only our members nominate people. Next year's theme is going to be on peace and nonviolence. And so the point is to nominate a woman whose life epitomizes working for peace and nonviolence. And that's our way of trying to be this web that reaches out and says, what's your ideas, bring them in, and let's see how we can bring them together. So that is basically what we do. And our theme this year really, as you can imagine, really caught on. Nevertheless, she persisted. So even Time Magazine called me to ask me about the theme and what it meant. And this year, more than ever, every single newscast has done something for Women's History Month. So we when this person at Time said to me something about, well, what do you see happening for Women's History Month? I said, every year it just keeps growing more and more because people begin to understand the power of knowing their own history. And I wasn't BSing. I have been known to do that before, but I wasn't. I was really telling the truth, that especially this young generation gets a sense of what they're a part of. And once we know what we're part of, we're all stronger. So that's that.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how you connect the sites and your plans for the new alliance?
Well, we don't really know all of it. Right now, every year we have partners. We solicit partnerships because we're not funded at all. We're only funded through our sales and through donations. So we don't have any government funding or any foundation funding or anything like that. So our partners, every year we recruit partners, and we give them like gazettes and promotion and all of that. as we move out to actually establish alliances, we probably will ask for more money and we'll probably be able to provide more services. Right now, it's everything that we're doing is really in transition, and we are more than willing to accept ideas from anybody who has them, any organization that we might be able to serve better if we provided X, Y, and Z, let's say. Let us know, because that's what we want to do. We really want to link all organizations so that, again, we're all so much stronger when we're connected. So, does that answer, Sue?
That part, and how do you connect with projects and academics and things like that?
Well, almost all of it is really a shotgun approach through we have an e-newsletter and stuff like that. Or if somebody will write me and say, have you considered such and such? Well, no, I hadn't, but then the emails go back out immediately. Anybody ever says to me, have you thought about doing this, Molly? And I say, no, but give me the emails. So that we're always trying to expand. I know this might sound strange, but some people don't get it about women's history. They think women's history, because they went to school and it was read the book and answer the question. So they don't understand the power of history. They think it's about dead people who died a long time ago or dates and stuff like that. So not all of my outreach is successful, we'll put it that way. But nevertheless, she persisted is definitely one of our themes.
Good, thank you.
Shouldn't it be, a question, be called Her Story as much as possible?
No, we really moved away from that because history is not really his story. It goes back to the Greek. And we wanted women's history to be just as legitimate as the concept of, it's like her story makes it almost like suffragette, kind of diminutive in some way.
Really?
And that's why we've always used history.
Okay,
But other women's organizations feel differently, but
Yeah.
that's why we made the choice.
okay.
My name is Becky Shargans, and I have been an advisor, a national advisor to the National Women's History Museum for going on now 16 years. I can't believe it. And I run the coalition of organizations, and it has been an honor and a privilege to be involved with so many outstanding women. So I'm very blessed. This kind of goes a little bit about, well, a lot, about where Molly was headed. We in the National Women's History Museum decided where to really take a look at where are the women. I think that so many women have been underrepresented. It's really a sad state of affairs. So we decided to have scholars and teachers and really experienced people examine the status of women's history in the state level social studies. And the states had devised sets of learning standards that describe what students are expected to know and able to do at specific stages
Did
of
you want to
education.
pass those out now?
Pardon me?
Did you want to pass them?
They certainly are able to do that. I was going to go through this and then let them have it, so.
Yeah, wait so that
Yeah.
we don't.
Okay.
You know how that is.
Yes, I
People
do.
are already on page 3 and
Yeah, I know.
you're on
I
page
should
2.
say that's
But
I'll just
exactly.
cut all this stuff out and you'll be picked up right where you left off.
Okay. The report and analysis of this is really outstanding, I have to say. It is the first time that this has been researched by experienced people, our staff. The lack of representation and context in state level materials presupposes that women's history is even less represented at the classroom level. This implies that women's history is not important. And I know that you used Myra Sagner's each time a girl opens a book and finds a womanless history, she learns she is worth less. And that is pretty much the truth if you have young women who really do want to be a part of a career, who want to understand women's history. So our museum's project team read this is incredible, the social studies standards for each state and the District of Columbia. And the project staff highlighted every standard that referred to a woman or a topic, and then they copied it each in a database. So it's available to all who would take a look at it. And they reviewed the database entries to ensure that the selected standards met the project's definitions about history and the history about women. In the final steps, the researchers counted the number of times, can't believe they did this, the number of times that women's names and key terms occurred within the standards. The analysis describes the way that women's history is characterized in public schools in the U.S. K through 12. So we're starting very early, and to get the young women,
And
ready.
young men.
Pardon me?
Excuse me, and young men.
Well, this one wasn't about young men.
All right.
No, and that was the reason. I'll go through that real quickly. It suggests that women are excluded because the standards that are in the framework, they prefer male-oriented, exceptional leadership, while overemphasizing, unfortunately, women's domestic roles. Okay? Individual women. Some of the findings that we had, 178 individual women are named in state standards. 15 women are named more than 10 times in the standards. Individual women listed in standards are usually those who achieved a high level of national or regional name recognition for their activities. We then took a look at women by race. And since the new history movement began in the 1960s, coincided with modern rights movements, many states include the history of marginalized groups and standards. Women as a group are often characterized as one of these marginalized groups, and along with the ethnic minority groups and the working class. Non-elite, non-white women who appear in the standards are most often associated with the history of their marginalized groups. And the 178 women listed in standards occupy this designation. Named by race: white, 63%, African American, 25%, Asian American or Pacific Islanders really had no percentage at all. I mean, that is the sadness of it. Native American, Native Alaskan, 4%, Hispanic, 8%. And then the distribution of women by racial category reflects the emphasis on standards in protest movements. So the first women's rights movement in the 19th century arose as elite white women challenged social and economic and political definitions. Many of these women rose to national prominence by effective use of the media. And then the elite white women who had the most access to resources were the ones to advance their causes, most often connected with the abolitionist and modern civil rights movement. Other rights movements like disability rights, Native American rights, LGBTQ or migrant labor movements are less frequently included in standards, and when they are, in less detail. Okay, this is the reason why I want to give these out to you if you all fall asleep while I'm reading this. But anyway, the distribution, the state standards divide social studies, believe it or not, into topic areas. And so while women occasionally appear by name under topics, more often women are listed as a group. In some cases, the topics could be understood to be about women or inclusive of women, for example, Seneca Falls, and that family or the home front. And with the guidance of the museum's advisory council, the project team culled a list of data that assumes standards writers intended to be inclusive of women's roles and activities. We found that 1,975 mentions of women, women's history, and women's roles within all state standards. That was it. And then the standards overwhelmingly emphasize women in their domestic roles. So that tells a lot. The team did not count the total number of standards, men by name, so that answers your question, or the number of topics about men, because this was designed, as a project to have a percentage. What we learned is standards prioritize listing women of accomplishment, which reflect the standards' overall tendency to celebrate individual leadership and achievement. State standards do not collectively address the breadth and width of women's history. Rather, standards address a minority of topics and groups, and standards overemphasize women in their domestic roles without placing women's activities in broader context. So, a small number of the topics do relate to some of the commonly associated women-centric, the progressive era, and women's suffrage and voting rights. So that helps. The takeaway in all of this is that the result of this project is a data set of women and topics within U.S. history and standards. The state standards are not women's history. Okay, I mean, they are simply not women's history. The events, the topics, and the subjects ought to be seen from women's perspective. So it understands the culture, experience, and the women's historical experiences differ from men's. And finally, we have now identified the common women's topics in history standards. The National Women's History Museum is going to embark over the next, probably next year, or the part of the study. Throughout the year, they're going to work on master educators, with that master educators, scholars, and public history experts. And our emphasis are going to be on this topic of national standards.
That is so great. And this research, you can't
No.
I can't even say enough good things about this because people are always asking for these stats as you.
And you will get a copy of that. They're underlined, and the call to action for us really is that this gives, just as you said, gives people, teachers, an opportunity for dialogue, for being able to concentrate more on women and what they are doing, what they have done, and that we really encourage all of our stakeholders to advocate for this. So I know sounds like Research 101, but it is. And this is the first time that this has been done in the U.S.
Oh, I know.
So it really has, it's opened a whole new way of looking at women's history.
Thank you.
What's the status of getting a museum?
Well, the status of getting a museum is the fact that we had two two groups that the Senate and the House, and they worked and worked and worked. But as we all know, the administration changed, and there were an awful...
And one of the
Yes.
sites was used for something else.
Yes, and so we have been plowing ahead with the kinds of things like this so that we can, show that we are on the ball insofar as taking a look at the curriculum and women's history.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was very informative.
Milani is ready, and we are ready to learn a lot about one of our newer but fully women-dedicated museums, the National Museum of Women in the Arts. And why don't you tell us about your role there and your background, which is fascinating, as well as what you're trying to do.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Milani Douglas, and I'm the Director of Public Programs at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. I came into the position 7 months ago, hit the ground running, absolutely running, had to we run a women's art and social change program, and the program is about highlighting and women that are at the intersection of art and social change and giving them a platform to speak about the work that they're doing. When I came into the position, what I realized is that there was an opportunity for there to be a larger network around the program. You have all of these amazing women that are coming, whether it's a cocktail hour or for a Sunday supper. So twice we have about 5 programs during the season. 2 of those programs are Sunday suppers, where we literally sit down family style and we have a dinner. We also have the women that are working at the top of their field, or anyone that's championing women. We have them speak for usually about an hour and 15 minutes, and then over dinner, the audience can ask them questions. And then we have a Catalyst cocktail hour where we have an activity that allows the women in the audience to have some sort of experiential learning experience. Our audience is the most diverse audience that the museum has. We have ages from 18 to 80, and I love it. We tried to have it, my goal is to make it even more intergenerational. And I'll speak a little bit about that when I get into it. The other thing that I did coming into the position is that I shifted the format from it being where we have the speakers that speak and then we have the audience that ask questions. You know, I got a chance, I love research, so this is definitely going to be something that I will enjoy. But I started to research the email addresses of the women that were coming to the audience, and I'm like, these women are at the top of their field. We have this amazing, brilliant audience that's coming in here that are on the ground working every day with these women are talking about. So you have this spectrum. Some people that are up here working at it over here. You have someone that's like every day the person that signs the paperwork, opens the door, makes sure that whatever you're trying to get through pushed through. And so I turned the format from having a panel discussion to really having a forum. So now that at the end of the discussion, we ask the audience for solutions and we invite the audience to either present the question that they're wrestling with, or we invite them to present a solution. That's something that's working on their job. Just because I think that, there's an untapped brilliance, of course, in women, and sometimes we do get into habits of not tapping into that brilliance just because we buy into a more patriarchal organizational culture that doesn't benefit us, and it just becomes a habit where we forget where we come from. That's more of a circle. And so I try to make the programming that what we're doing a circle and then also a network. So my goal with I didn't even start the time, so I'll take that 3 minutes. So my goal for the program from here on out is, how do we take the women that are coming to these programs? We also have a national advisory board that operates in a lot of states. We also have an international advisory board. So sometimes these conferences or these forums are broadcasted live. They're always live streamed. So how do we make it more of a network, so that if there's a woman who wants to get involved with your history project, how do we make it accessible and easy for her to, 1, know about it, 2, know the call to action, 3, to be able to say and have just cut all the middle pieces between actually being able to do something, whether that's to come to, set up a social media profile or to do something on a larger level. There are a lot of women that, like you said before, we multitask. We multitask every single thing. And we just had the director of the Tate, and her name is Frances Morris, and she has 3 children. She's married. She's running the Tate Modern Museum, which is like one of the top museums. And so as a mom who is a mother of a 6-year-old, I had a lot of questions. I said, how do you do this? And she said, being a woman is the best executive training that you're ever going to have. And I was like, yes. I was like, you know what? I've never had anyone say that. I mean, my dad luckily raised me with a lot of that. I don't know if he would call himself a feminist, but he always put the history of women in every single thing. There's not a part of growing up that I did not learn about. If I learned about a man in history, I learned about the women in history. If I learned about a white woman in history, I learned about the black women in history. If I learned what was happening to black people, what was happening to Native people, what was happening. So it was really this understanding of like what was happening in a very interconnected way. And I think that we have an opportunity to do that. So I did not think that I would see, and I would consider myself, young, but I would say I did not think that some of the things that I'm seeing right now I would ever see in my lifetime. And what I mean by that is that I just never thought that we would get to the point that we would actually have some honest language about what needs to happen about making changes for women. And right now we're having some very, very hard conversations, and the language is clear. It's been murky before. So what I'd like to talk about is the importance of why it's important to know your history and also to share history. So like I said, I have my daughter, and I think about the way that I was raised, and I took it for granted. I went to mostly white schools, and I just assumed that everybody had 3 different histories that they learned. There was a school history that you learned in school. I thought everybody went home and just learned about the people that looked like them. I didn't even see I didn't see a white picture of Christ until I was like 15 years old. I just had no concept of that there was such a gap in history and the way that people were presenting it. And I think that it was when I got into high school and gifted and talented classes and really learning like this, I was like, this is a gap. And I didn't feel disadvantaged. I actually felt like everybody else was missing out because I felt like they were clueless about what actually happened in certain situations. And so I think I developed an interest in it then. How is it that you could possibly know about, let's say, George Washington and not know that he owned slaves and not know how this nation's capital was built and not know about his wife and the struggles that she had? I mean, it would baffle me, and even having to go back and forth with some teachers, because I was like, this is not what you're doing. And I grew up in a time of the Dewey Decimal System of classification. I'm very proud to say. But I also grew up with the internet, so while you're talking, I'm also like researching and things like that, and So I think it's interesting that you bring up the standards, you know, because when you gave that number about there being 19 standards that address women, as a former teacher, I understand that in one grade you can have up to 40 standards. So that's one grade for one state. So if one grade, if a 12th grade social studies class
Right.
has 40 standards in one state, you need to know the magnitude of standards there are. So when they say 1,900, they're really talking out of like at least 50,000. I mean, that's a minimum. So I wanted to also have you guys have to understand like what exactly that number looks like. It's not just like, because if you say 1,900 out of 3,000, it's like, oh, we're doing something. No, it's 1,900 of at least 50 to 60,000. So we need to know how small that is. The other thing I want to talk about is like, when we talk about history, telling the whole history. So my daughter, when she was 3 years old, she said she wanted to be a midwife, a singing midwife, to quote her. So I really struggled with the idea of like, you know, what do you teach a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old wants to be a midwife? And I said she wanted to see birth, and she had a temper tantrum about not seeing birth. But we did, you know. So we did, and we watched birth on YouTube, which was a whole other thing, because I was like, wow, this is interesting about how race and culture comes up in even the birth story on YouTube. But that's another thing. So we found, you know, a lot of women, and then also tried to make sure that she saw women that looked like her giving natural birth. And I'm glad I did, because now she gives mommy the utmost status, because she knows the truth, right? Instead of like having this very like selfish, you know, 4-year-old running around, you know, we have conversations where I'm like, well, this is what mommy went through. And she knows, she's like, I know. You know? You carried me for 10 months. You nursed me for 3 years. You were my restaurant. You were my, you know, apartment building. And so now she knows mommy gets top billing. Okay. So, but what we do is that we don't tell, because we don't tell the whole ugly truth, and I almost not let her see that birth, we don't let people have an appreciation for history if you're not telling whole history. So that makes me think about, I remember growing up in the 80s, and like I remember when crack hit, and I bring this up because what if we listened to what black women were saying about crack hitting in the 80s? We would not have this issue with meth. We wouldn't have the issue with meth. So if we had listened to the history of like what were black women were up in arms about what happened in the communities at the time period. I went from being able to ride my bike through the city with my older cousins at like 4 to not being able to go on my steps by the end of the summer, to not being able to go outside by the next summer. By the end of that summer, I had to move. And that's literally what crack did to Baltimore. But because it was brown bodies, we didn't listen. And then I think about that, and I'm like, what if we listened to Anita Hill? Like, if we had listened to what Anita Hill said about sexual harassment in politics,
That's right.
we would not have to do so. That whole telling a kind of sort of story is a problem, because we end up having to learn what to do later. And we could have, there's some lessons that we could have got a long time ago. And even I think about Recy Taylor. What if we listened to Recy Taylor? And if we listened to and really read the story of Harriet Ann Jacobs, and we really talked about what this woman was dealing with, sexual trauma and ownership as a little slave girl. I mean, if we listen to those stories and you get the whole story and tell the ugly part, the truth, show the birth. You know, having my 2-year-old watch a head, you know, come out of like a woman's body, it was a lot, but you know what? It put things in perspective. And it really was a shifting moment for me that said, you know, if we take the time, that if we really heard the cries of Mamie Till when her son was slaughtered, if we really looked at the race for Shirley Chisholm and what that was like for her, if we really had a chance, we would understand why Hillary lost. We would have a deeper understanding of what actually happened. We would have even understood what the Democratic Party was about to fall apart. How anybody didn't see that Trump was going to win. I was like, I don't know how y'all don't see this. People were like, I'm going to stay up and wait. I went to sleep. I was like, he won. I knew he won. I knew he won when he won the primary. I said, okay, well, let's prepare for this one. Because if you know American history, if you look at Reconstruction, and when you look at what happened after Reconstruction, if we listen to the stories of black women after Reconstruction, we wouldn't be surprised by Trump. And if we listen to the woman, the Queen of Hawaii, and what her struggle was to keep the independence of her people, we wouldn't have these disagreements about what it means to understand your independence and really having a relationship with government that does not dehumanize people. So that's, basically, I know that, but that's basically, so my role is to bring all of that into the Women's History Museum. I was surprised I got the job because when I told them, I said, because you don't tell a museum director that, that you're not excited about museums, because I'm like, well, they're dying. I don't really want to go into a tomb. But, if you want me here, this is what I feel makes a building come alive. And the reason that I got the job is because I started a nomadic museum that just refused to be in any buildings. I think it's hilarious that I'm in one now. But that was the Family Arts Museum, focused as family as fine art, home as curated space, a community as gallery, that really flipped the domestic space to say all that art that you all created out there is really informed by everything that I do in here. So you try to diminish it, and I'm going to let you know that there's nothing that happens without family, home, and community. And who runs that space? We do. So that's what I do. If you have any questions about, what we're having, I just want to say I'm so happy for the work that you're both doing. I'm a research geek, so when I looked up you all, I actually had like an anxiety attack about coming to speak. I was like, oh God, okay, I can do this. But so it is a pleasure to meet you.
And to you.
It's a pleasure to meet you, like that. I mean, and I really, really hope that this is something that can be. I don't know what will happen, but I'm glad that it starts here.
Good.
Wonderful. Questions? We really have.
And also, please grab some more cake. We have lots of it out there. Help celebrate.
Holly?
Okay, you mentioned Gerda Lerner. Do you study Gerda Lerner? Do you know Gerda Lerner?
No.
Well, okay. I don't know where to start. I just thought we studied women's history so often, and we were going to have this program, and I said, well, why don't we have a little attribution to Gerda Lerner, who had so much. So let me tell you, because it kind of relates to you too. Okay, so I did this little one sheet. I wish I had brought it. I'll send it. Okay, she in 1948 did her dissertation on the Grimke sisters, and she wanted to publish it, and she couldn't publish it. Correct me. Anyone can correct me if I get the wrong date.
58. You said 48, I think it was 58, wasn't it?
I happen to know because that's
Oh,
where I was
okay.
born,
Go for
and
it.
that's the only date I can ever remember. Talk about history. Okay, okay. So she couldn't publish it, and because everyone said, why would anyone want to read about women? That's And so anyway, she. Correct me if I'm wrong. She's a prolific writer. She wrote Why History Matters, What Feminist Conscience. She wrote in her 90s, and everywhere she went, she taught a women's history course when she was actually an undergraduate. Everywhere she went, she progressively studied some department to teach women's history in the master's, and then she ended up at the University of Wisconsin where there was a whole women's history program. Anyway, she's another. Here's why history matters, because if you have any free time, you can study some people and learn so much from the people who just are like the Gerda Lerners or the Frederick Douglass or all these people that just should inform your life. So anyway, I just thought that Gerda Lerner should
I
get
definitely looked at it. And I want to say that history definitely matters, we've got to do something about source material. Like, we have to do something about source material, and that's why what you're doing is so important. Like, we need women writing,
that's what she did.
And writing about women, and so there is that. And if there is that exists, what is the easiest way to be accessible to it? But also, like, the documentation of what women are doing right now. I think somebody said how young women are, there's so many young women making history. Who's writing it? And not only writing it, videotaping it, recording it, because we have, I've never thought I would feel this way. We literally have every single thing we need to take this world in the direction of whatever way we want to take it in. And that is just the bottom line. And if we don't do it, it's because we chose not to. We literally have every single resource on a global level. And I'm not just saying here in the United States, globally, we could shift, as women, could shift everything if we organized the resources
That's right.
and told a whole history and really dealt with, like, got away from this hierarchical thing and really got back to the circle.
That's
So.
right.
And,
So
you know, I want to
share,
just,
the second part of that, which I only thought about while I'm sitting here. When I was graduating from, or whatever, elementary school, I was a history buff, and I was to get the American Civics History, medal, and they wouldn't give it just to a girl. I actually told my
That's right.
parents, well, we have to get a boy in this, we don't give girls academic awards. They can get it in sewing, in home ec, but not in history,
And this
math.
wasn't in New York, was it?
It was in New York.
Yeah.
In Brooklyn, New York.
That's right.
And this, but I'm old,
I'm not surprised.
it's a long time ago.
Seasoned.
Right, and so this is, it even didn't want to give you the reward for studying the history and so on. It was that bad.
I would just like to say, I'm writing a book. I've written many books, but this book is called 12 Angry Women. And I've been trying to put this out there. The first woman in 1896, her name was Alice Guy Blanchet. She was French, and she's the first woman director of a narrative film before any man directed. And from her company, Solarplex Productions, to the silent era, women were producers, directors, editors, writers. Only Anita Luce was on this list, and in 19, when the talkies came in, big boys took over the industries, and they wrote these women out of history.
That's right.
And this book is there to bring them back in, and we have to tell the truth from the beginning, and because we can't free the people in other countries, and they're under Barker rules still. They're still trapped. They're still under that rule in other countries where they're not going to have rights like we have here. And if we don't all free everybody together, we can do it if we join together to do this.
I
And
think the other thing too is that,
A little louder, please.
I think the other thing too, and I'm listening to you, Ms. Douglas. Thank you. You're a gift to me today.
Thank you.
All of you, is that sometimes the academics forget about the activists. Your history started with activists.
Right.
Your history started with activists. All of these women, regardless of role, domestic or whatever, they were activists. And they turned. So somehow we as women got to bring the activists that know some of the history and the scholars together, because those are the parts missing. And like I was saying when I was listening to some of you talk earlier, sometime when you're being out in the field, Molly tell you, I'm this activist, and I'm proud of it. And you hear some of the excitement when these women get the information, whether it's from the Gazettes, and then I find out I learned something from them too. I'm not just giving them something, because they inform me of somebody that I hadn't heard of. So it strikes me even more so that we really have to have more dialogue of this nature, and the recorders that's recording this, so we can have the stories. And you said about online,
There's an
we got
opportunity there.
a podcast, all of those things. We can really turn it upside down by
right.
utilizing these resources.
That's right. One last thing I wanted to tell you all is that we have a website, www.womenshistory.org, and this report is 222 pages, and what it has in it, I was just giving you almost the preface, but they also have all of the states in the Union and the District of Columbia with how they undertake this particular curriculum projects.
And and I just want to add, and you saying it, your comment, and your last comment made me think of it. The reason that women's history is often not told is because it's an activist history, one, and because if people really, really understood what women did, how this country was built, that this country would be on fire. And so you can't keep if you tell an activist story, if you tell an actively engaged civic story, then that totally flips the script about who actually has access to power. And you're telling and it flips how we deal with economics. And then also, if you deal with how women dealt with things, you really can't have this economy the way that it's set up the same way either. So you can't have all these other conversations about economy, poverty, capitalism, and the way that it negatively affects. You can't have those conversations when you talk about the way women did it. Because when you talk about that, it puts people back in a place that we want to forget. Like, we like to forget that that this is a rebellious country. We want to forget that. I don't know where we think we are. Like, Weather Underground went into the Senate and shot it up. Like, and I'm not saying you need to do that, but you never hear that story. You don't hear those resistance stories, because if you heard them and you knew them and you knew what was in your molecular DNA capable for you to do as what you say as far as being an American citizen, what that really means in this country is a rebellious state of mind. And none of this could exist if you really knew that. And that's why you can't talk about women. And that's why you can't talk about people of color. Because it means that you're going to move away from a passive state. So.
But don't you think what we should really be doing is teaching people to question what they're not getting? I mean, the way we learn things is what we're given in school, and we are not taught to question what we're not given. You know what I mean? That we'll just.
I think that's a great point, but I think that because we're not even taught to have an analysis of what we're given, there's not even an analysis of what you're given.
Right.
It's like you go to school and this is what you get. You don't even analyze what you get, and in order for you to know what you don't have, you do have to have an assessment of what you have, and you have to say, well, and even in today's testing world, which is why I left teaching, you're not even taught to critically think. The way that the school system is set up now is to create you cannot have a democratic society that's not properly educated with some form of, like, you have to have analysis. That's what you need to properly vote in this society. So I agree with you, but it has to start with, we don't even know. A lot of the education system is not even set up for people to properly analyze what is there.
I think we're saying the same thing.
We definitely are. And even, they're not even able to analyze their own classroom. Because it's not only what's in the text, you don't even know who's sitting next to you. Because if somebody's sitting next to you that looks like me and you don't see me in that book, why isn't your mind going in a different place? Why aren't you even, you're not even thinking. So it's like, I feel that I'm I always say to my daughter, be aware. She has a whole lot of freedom, but I'm like, okay, now be aware, because she has to be aware of where she is, not where she's not. Because her being aware of where she is, that's where her whole GPS system starts. Where am I? Who am I sitting with? And then that can determine, okay, well, wait a minute, what's not here? Okay, well, wait a minute, what needs to be here? So I think it's the same way, but it's coming from a different angle. And honestly, I'm like, whatever works. All hands on deck. If you want to start from what's not there, and I want to start from what's there, as long as everybody's got their hands on deck, that's what matters to me.